So what if I told you the Amazon rainforest, the literal lungs of our planet, is actually facing a terrifying, silent crisis? We all see the massive headlines, right? The deforestation, the logging, the devastating fires, but there is something far, far more insidious happening right now that almost nobody is talking about. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain to reveal the hidden truths of an ecosystem that is literally collapsing from the inside out.
Is the Amazon dying from within? Man, it's a really heavy thought. But the reality is, the destruction goes so much deeper than what we can just spot from a satellite image. We're going to break down exactly how this internal collapse is happening. And I promise you, the final revelation we uncovered today, it's an absolute game changer for how you'll view the future of our planet.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because what we're witnessing here isn't just a simple loss of trees. It's a cascade of collapse. Think of it like a highly complex domino effect of ecological failure. When just one single piece of this intricate system is compromised, it triggers a massive chain reaction that threatens the entire basin.
Which brings us to our first major point, the illusion of recovery. Let's shatter a major misconception right off the bat.
We hear a ton about reforestation efforts. And look, while planting trees is inherently a good thing, a regrown sapling is absolutely not a replacement for an ancient rainforest. Honestly, it's kind of like comparing a standard houseplant to a giant redwood. These mature, old-growth forests possess incredibly complex soil structures and intricate fungal networks that took centuries, literally millennia, to develop. They hold a unique biodiversity that you simply cannot replace just by tossing some seeds back into the dirt.
And this actually brings us to a really shocking fact about the Amazon. Despite all that lush, dense green you picture, the soil beneath it is surprisingly thin. It's fragile and it's incredibly nutrient poor. The entire ecosystem basically survives through something called rapid nutrient cycling. It's this brilliant closed-loop system where dead leaves and organic matter hit the forest floor and decompose almost instantly, immediately feeding new life. But here's the catch. When you clear and burn the forest, you completely destroy that fragile organic layer. The heavy tropical rains sweep right in and wash away whatever thin topsoil was left. What you're left with is heavily compacted, totally infertile earth. Replanting there is literally like trying to grow a garden in pure clay. This locks vast, vast areas of the Amazon into a state of near sterility. It's basically a one-way ticket to desertification.
Next up, fractured and invaded. This is the next falling domino in our cascade.
We often talk about deforestation like it's just one giant block of trees being removed. But the on-the-ground reality is fragmentation. When we carve roads or clear little patches, we break the large, continuous forest into smaller, isolated islands. And this creates what's known as the edge effect. Suddenly, the deep, protected, humid interior of the forest is exposed to harsh wind and blinding sunlight. The specialized habitats shrink and vital animal migration routes are entirely cut off.
And this brilliantly illustrates the severity of this fragmentation. It's essentially like turning a massive mansion into a bunch of tiny, disconnected studio apartments. The original highly specialized inhabitants, animals that require massive territories to hunt and mate, they simply cannot thrive in these smaller, vulnerable, and deeply isolated patches.
Because these fragments are weakened, they invite in a silent, creeping enemy, biological infiltration. The Amazon is currently fighting a brutal two-front battle. On one side, you have the human impact, and on the other, a full-blown invasion of non-native species choking out the original life. Take the Melaleuca quinquenervia, for example. It's an Australian tree that actively creates impenetrable monocultures, basically turning diverse areas into biological deserts. Add in feral pigs totally tearing up the ground, and invasive ants disrupting native food chains, and you have an ecosystem that is actively being dismantled from the inside out.
Moving on to our third chapter, the unseen toxic threat. We have to look at the invisible human elements seeping into the remaining healthy areas.
Look, this goes way, way beyond the visible destruction of things like oil spills. We're dealing with invisible killers here. Illegal gold mining, for instance, relies heavily on mercury. That mercury leaches directly into the rivers, severely contaminating the fish and essentially poisoning the local populations who rely on them to survive. On top of that, you have massive agricultural expansion surrounding the forest basin, leading to heavy pesticide runoff. These chemicals seep deep into the soil and water, chemically disrupting incredibly delicate biological processes that the forest absolutely needs to survive.
So what we're left with is a slow, devastating poisoning. It's a creeping menace that remains completely invisible to the naked eye,
until the severe cumulative damage to the region's biodiversity is already done. And tragically, by the time we can visually see the effects of these toxins, it's almost always far too late to reverse the damage.
Let's move to the global tipping point and see how this all builds together. This is where every single threat we've discussed ties into one terrifying reality.
To truly grasp the global impact, you have to understand something called flying rivers. The Amazon doesn't just sit there producing oxygen, it actually generates its own weather. Through a process called transpiration, the billions of trees release massive streams of moisture up into the air. These airborne rivers travel thousands of miles. They dictate rainfall and weather patterns not just in South America, but globally. Without the Amazon functioning at full capacity, distant agricultural regions across the entire globe face unexpected, severe droughts.
And this triggers the ultimate climate feedback loop. Let's walk through it. Step 1, degradation and fragmentation reduce the overall tree cover. Step 2, fewer trees mean less transpiration, which means significantly less moisture in the air. Step 3, this lack of moisture triggers longer, more severe droughts right inside the Amazon basin itself. It's literally as if the thirsty forest has lost its ability to water itself. And finally, step 4. These hotter, deeply dry conditions act as kindling. They spark massive wildfires that clear even more of the forest. The loop just repeats, growing stronger and more destructive every single time.
As this loop accelerates, the degraded forest actually loses its ability to store carbon. Instead of acting as a giant sponge for our planet's emissions, the dying, burning Amazon actually begins releasing massive amounts of stored carbon back into the air. It transforms from our greatest defense against climate change into a massive accelerator of global warming.
Which brings us to a deeply shocking prediction: 2030. Scientists are warning us right now that if this complex web of degradation, the soil loss, the edge effect, the poison, the failing flying rivers, if all of this continues at its current pace, the rainforest will hit an irreversible tipping point, and that point could arrive as soon as the end of this very decade.
If we hit that tipping point, we face what's called the savanna transition. This is the unthinkable consequence where the Amazon permanently loses its ability to sustain its own rain cycle. The lush, incredible, biodiverse rainforest we know today would fundamentally and irreversibly transform into a dry, desert-like savanna. The global consequences for weather, for agriculture, and honestly, for human survival, they would be catastrophic. Now, I know this is a heavy explainer to process. Take a breath. But look, despair is simply not an option here. Knowledge is power. By understanding that this isn't just about counting chopped-down trees, but about an interconnected, silent crisis, we empower ourselves. It allows us to make truly informed choices. It helps us support rigorous conservation efforts that address fragmentation and soil health, and it helps us demand real systemic action from global leaders. So, I want to hear from you. What is the one fact about the Amazon's health that surprised you the most today? Was it the flying rivers, the invasive species? Let me know down in the comments, because understanding this together is the absolute first step toward fixing it. Thank you so much for joining me for this critical explainer. Make sure you're subscribed, because next week we are diving into something incredibly hopeful: the surprising ways cutting-edge technology is actively saving endangered species from the brink. You definitely won't want to miss it. Stay curious, and I'll see you then.